I'd like to welcome everybody to our first Northern Illinois Food Bank webinar. We are trying this new technology in the hope that more of you will be able to participate in some of our training sessions without having to travel to one of our centers. Welcome everybody. My name is Hester Bury. I am the Director of Corporate and Foundation Giving for the Food Bank. Some of you will have heard me give this presentation before. I have changed a few of the slides, and even if you've heard it before, I think it's always good information and good reminders of how important getting funding for your food pantry is to continuing to serve our hungry neighbors. Northern Illinois Food Bank is committed to helping our partners build capacity so that you can continue to meet the need for hunger relief in your communities. We know you're all out there doing a good job on the front lines, but that the need is not going away, and we need to help you get more food out to our neighbors. An important part of capacity building is fundraising, and writing grants and proposals is a very useful fundraising tool. This training is made possible by a grant that the Food Bank received from Kraft Foods, specifically for capacity building training, and that also funds the capacity building grant application that we will be talking about at the end of this session. Just a brief rundown on the agenda. I will be giving you some fundraising trends and tips, ways to find grants and funding resources, how to prepare yourself with your food pantry's basic information on who you are and what you do, how to prepare a letter of intent that could be sent to a possible funder, some tips on grant applications for more formal grant proposals, and finally the details about applying for the Kraft Capacity Building Grant opportunity through the Food Bank. And then I will leave some time for questions and answers. So just as an overview of the Food Bank revenue sources for fiscal 12, which we are on a July 1st fiscal year, so this would have been from July 1st, 2011 through June 30th, 2012. As you will see, individuals are almost half of our resource of fundraising. And that's something you need to remember. Don't discount the importance of your individual givers, your individual donors, and keep them engaged. They are critical to you building a strong base of donors. Foundations and corporations, which is what we're going to concentrate on largely today, is about 35%. And I would say probably 20 to 25% of that is through grant proposals. The rest might come from corporations that do internal, what we call third-party fundraisers for us, or from matching gifts, corporations that match employee gifts. And the rest is special events. We do a couple of major special events. I would not recommend special events as a major fundraising tool. They take a lot of work, a lot of staff resources, and often your return on investment is not as great as maybe with going to individual donors or to corporations and foundations with proposals. So as I said, individuals provide approximately half of our revenue, and they are what we see as the best area for growth. Individuals can be current supporters of your food bank, board members, volunteers. I know sometimes people are reluctant to ask volunteers for financial support because you feel like they're giving their time. But if they're engaged enough in your organization to give their time, they probably also would be prepared to consider supporting financially if they're asked. And that's the key point. If you don't ask them, they won't give. Co-workers, family and friends, it's just a question of getting out there and telling people what you're doing. As with any kind of relationship building, it's important that you engage your donors in your mission, make sure they know what you're doing, how you're serving, and maybe get them involved through volunteering. Look locally. Donors like to support the communities where they live and work, so even if it's a national corporation, if they have a local office or a local plant, they will support locally. And look at some of your local businesses that are independent, family-owned businesses. They may well be able to support you also. We are seeing nationally a growth in corporate in-kind giving. So corporations that might be able to give product that you can use, such as cleaning supplies, garbage bags, something like that, or services. Maybe you need help with some of your computer or IT work. Maybe there's a local corporation that could help give that as an in-kind donation. And then online giving is a huge growth area across the country. So it's important that you can offer different options for ways to donate. If you don't currently offer online giving and don't have the capability to add that to your website, hopefully most of you have websites, you can use a service such as Network for Good. It's probably the most well-known one that will process online donations for you. So here's the link for that. It's worth checking out. And if you have listened to any of my grant trainings before, you will know that this is my big message. If you don't ask, you don't get. You've got to be prepared to go up there and ask. If you personally are not comfortable asking, then find somebody that supports your organization, even if it's a volunteer, that will ask for you. Most funders aren't going to be out there looking for you. You need to be searching them out. And a lot of it is building awareness. Once people know what your organization does, how you're helping, how many people you're helping locally, they are going to want to get involved and want to help. You just have to make it easy for them. Talk to your neighbors, your friends, talk to your children's schools, local stores, churches, and try contacting the local press or the TV that might come and do a short feature on your food pantry. Maybe hold an open house, just put it in the local newspaper, put some posters up around town, and you'd be surprised how many people might come and just find out what you're doing. So most funders that you are going to go to, corporations and foundations, get thousands of requests. How do they choose who to support? You have to get them engaged, tell your story, make it compelling, and make them feel they're part of your organization and that they are making a difference. I'm going to start by looking at some ways to find corporate donors. A great resource is Chamber of Commerce directories or city websites. So Chamber of Commerce for your town or your city or your county usually have directories on their website or printed directories. Take a look through there and look at local corporations. Once you find a corporation that you think might be interested in receiving a proposal from you, go to their website, and most of them, the bigger corporations for sure, will have information on their charitable giving. It's usually under the About Us tab, Community, Social Responsibility, something like that. If it's a national corporation, find the local office and see if you can find somebody that works there. If not, just try calling, asking for the human resources manager or the plant manager. They're usually people that handle those kind of donation requests. Ask what the procedure for requesting a donation is. Can you just send a letter, or do you need to go through a more formal, some corporations will have a more formal online process. And a great way to get into corporations is to get them in volunteering. A lot of corporations now will offer time off, paid time off for employees if they want to volunteer at a local nonprofit. And once you get employees in volunteering and engaged with your organization, they are often in a position to recommend you for a financial donation. They are also potential individual donors, so you're kind of getting to them two ways. For foundations, which tend to be local family foundations, private foundations, you can use some online resources. Foundation Center is probably the best known. Go in there and search for foundations in your city or county. You can also go to one of the philanthropy centers that are manned or organized by Donors Forum. There are centers in DeKalb, Grayslake, Glen Ellen, and Joliet, and you can find the links on donorsforum.org. These centers have resources that may be subscription, where you'd have to pay to get the online resources otherwise. They have the subscription, so you can go in there, spend an afternoon searching through some of their databases. And they often have staff that are really very helpful in navigating around finding resources. Search the web. There's a lot of information out there. Just search for grants by your county or city, or hunger resources, food resources, basic needs, basic human needs, human services. Just poke around, and you'd be surprised what you may come up with. Often news reports will mention corporations or foundations that have given locally, and there's your lead to find out more about them. Also, check out your local community foundation. They are in almost all our counties and some cities as well. Even if you are not eligible to apply to the community foundation for direct support, they manage many donor-advised funds, which are where an individual will decide to invest their money or the money they want to give to charity through a community foundation. And they look to the community foundation to recommend charities in the area that support the issues that they want to help. So it's worth making sure your community foundation knows who you are and what you do, so that if a potential donor comes to them and says, I want to support food pantries in the area, at least they'll know who you are. And then your board members should have resources, and ask them if they know anybody that serves on a local foundation board. Community organizations, these are probably already, some of them may already be supporting your organization. Usually you can find their information in city guides or chamber guides. And the best way in is if you know somebody that belongs to one of those organizations. Often they are looking for speakers, so they may well give you an opportunity to speak to one of their meetings. Most of them meet weekly or at least monthly. And another great way to get service clubs involved is through volunteering. They all have different procedures for making financial donations, so you need to ask how they decide who they're going to give their money to. Another way to get involved with them is to help with fundraising events. They're out there raising money from the community to give away to local nonprofits. If you help them with those events, they're going to remember you, and when they come to give away the money, maybe you'll be at the top of the list. If you go to speak to a Rotary or a Kiwanis Club, I would suggest that you always follow up with a written request. for a financial donation. They may, say, oh, yes, we'll support you, but the next week they're going to have some other nonprofit in there asking for money, and they may forget about you unless they have something written in front of them that they can refer back to when they're making their decisions about donations. A few other resources for fundraising. Your board members should be giving individually. They should also be encouraging their corporations or their friends that are in corporations to be getting involved with your organization. Obviously, your church, if you're a faith-based organization, your church and your community should be donating. Look at where your family and friends work. They may be resources. Some cities and townships have grant resources. Usually that's just a question of calling and asking what's available. Newspapers, read your local newspapers. You may well see reports in there of local corporations that have made donations. I like to go to other nonprofit websites because often they will post lists of their major donors, not individuals. Obviously, we don't usually release that information, but corporate and foundation and community groups. And if they are funding in your area and similar organizations, human services organizations, then there's a strong possibility that they will accept a proposal from you. Check the food bank website. We are trying to post more opportunities on there for local giving from corporations and foundations. So check the website out frequently to see if we have anything new up there. And then just keep your eyes around. Keep your eyes open as you drive around the community. Notice what big companies there are or who's advertising in the community. And you may find some people that would fund you that you hadn't even thought about. You could also do some of your own fundraising. I had talked briefly about special events, but an open house is pretty easy to plan. Maybe add a silent auction or a raffle. You can ask local restaurants if they will do a give back of 10% of their profits for a day, a week, a month, or have a roundup, which means as people check out at a restaurant, they put their change, the server asks them, would they put their change into a jar to support the food bank. That can raise a lot of money because most people will agree to put their 75 cents or 60 cents or whatever into the jar. Change collections are great for schools, Girl Scouts, people like that, or even at companies. Third-party fundraisers would be where you ask a company to do their own fundraiser to benefit your food pantry. So they might do a bake sale, a silent auction, a 50-50 raffle. We recently had a company that did a very successful karaoke contest among their employees. There's all sorts of ideas out there. And then don't forget, if the corporation, to ask individuals that are giving if their corporation matches their gift. Excuse me. So once you have a potential donor, do your research. Read the guidelines, either that are printed on their website or what they have told you over the phone. You will need to be a 501c3 to apply for almost any grants that are out there. Some organizations will not fund religious organizations. So if you are operating under your church's 501c3, you may want to consider applying for a separate 501c3 if you think you're going to be doing a lot of grant writing. Or please contact us at the food bank if you have questions regarding that. You should have a board of directors of at least 6 people. Any corporate foundation donors are going to want to know that there's some accountability for how you are using their funding. Do you fit their geographic focus? Make sure they fund in your area. and make sure you fit their funding focus, which usually will be listed as human services, basic needs, food, hunger. And look at how they fund. General operating, obviously, is what we all want so that we can use it where we want, either to purchase food, to pay salaries, to run your operation, pay the light bill. But more and more funders are looking to know exactly where their money is going, and therefore they want it to be program specific. So they want to know exactly what you're going to spend that money on. Or they might want to fund capital like equipment. So capital would be one-time donation towards equipment or building or repairing your roof or fixing your floor, something like that. Look at who else they've funded. Often that will be posted on their website, or for foundations, you can research their 990 through Foundation Center. And look at what levels they're funding at. Is their average giving $1,000, $5,000? What do you think would be an appropriate ask for your food pantry? Oh, sorry. And then make sure you check if there's a deadline. If it's an annual grant application, there may be a deadline that only comes around once a year, and if you miss that, you may have to wait another whole year. So you think you're ready to apply? Read the guidelines again and follow the directions, especially if it's what I call a formal grant proposal. They might say limit your request to 3 pages, 5 pages, limit the number of words, send so many numbers of copies, have it signed by your executive director or your board chair, and attach all these various documents. If you don't follow the guidelines, your application is going to get thrown out on the first read. And then I always suggest you call and get advice if it's a new organization that you are looking to fund, looking to get a donation from. Before you spend a lot of time working on the application, just see if you can find out, make sure you're eligible and that they know you're going to apply. Most funders will appreciate having a heads up about a new organization that is going to come to them for funds. And usually they're pretty helpful about giving advice. Consider collaborating with another agency if appropriate. Many donors are looking for collaboration, non-duplication. They don't want to feel like they're giving money to 2 organizations that are doing exactly the same thing in exactly the same place. So what I'm going to talk about now is the basic information for a letter of intent. And a letter of intent is what you would send when you call a corporation or a foundation that does not have a formal grant process, like a formal grant application or an online request form. And they just say to you, oh, we'd love to know more about your organization, just send us a letter. So these are my suggestions for what you would include into a letter of intent. Develop a boilerplate, which would be all your basic information about who you are, what you do. But be really careful when you're sending it to multiple funders that you make it personal to them. So read it really carefully. If you're going to use it again, copy and paste for another funder, read it really carefully with that funder in mind and make sure you adapt it to them. Put in your mission statement. Put in the need for your services in your area. You can use Map the Meal Gap statistics from Feeding America for your county. Unemployment numbers, local economy, maybe things that are specific to your area that have affected an increase of number of people coming to your pantry or your soup kitchen. Who are you serving? How many people? How often? Maybe put in a story that you've heard from one of your clients. And if you're able to document the increase that you have seen, either in the number of people coming or the amount of food you're distributing from one year to the next, then that really is compelling information for people to help you. Put in how you serve. People may not be familiar with how food pantries work, how often people can come. Talk about client choice. If you are a client choice pantry, the fact that that allows people to select the food they will eat, so food's not being wasted, and any other services you might provide, such as information and referrals for employment, for housing, for counseling. And then it helps, I think, to put where you get your food from, how much you get from the food bank, how much comes in through local donations, and maybe if you actually purchase items that you cannot get through the food bank, where you go to purchase those and what those items might be. And use 1 or 2 photos of your food pantry, or if it's a formal grant application, maybe have an attachment or a brochure that shows what your food pantry does. Obviously, you don't want to put photos of clients in there. You can do backs of clients or volunteers, but photos just help make it a little more appealing. Make sure you put an actual dollar amount in your request. Don't just say, please give us a donation. Put a specific amount. It should be based on what if you have been able to get information about how much they have funded other organizations, I would use that as a guideline. Ask high, but not too high. If you ask for 500, they'll probably give you 500. If you ask for 1,000, maybe they'll give you 1,000. Funders will very rarely go above what you ask for, so don't be afraid to ask a little higher. And we have used a very successful strategy here at the food bank of repeat requests to foundations or corporations. If they gave us, say, 5,000 last year or the last 2 years, then we have usually upped our request the next year by about 10 or 15%. And that seems to work well. Be specific about how you will use the money. Are you going to use it to purchase food from the food bank, from a local store, for stuff you can't get from the food bank? Are you going to use it for salaries if you have staff? Are you going to use it for equipment? A nice strategy would be to maybe look at what you spend in shared maintenance fees for 1 truckload of food, 1 delivery of food, or 1 month of food, and ask somebody to support that 1 delivery of food. It makes it very visual, and they can kind of get their head around, okay, my money is going to provide 6 pallets of food. Invite them to visit your food pantry. That always helps build the relationship. Visually seeing how you operate and what you do is so much more compelling than 3 pages of written information. You need the written information as well, but if you can follow that up with a visit and a face-to-face meeting, that's huge. And make sure you have information in there about how to contact the person that they should contact. If your pantry is not open, is only open, say, once a week, I would give alternate phone numbers, maybe cell phones, in case somebody has a question that they want answered, within 24 hours. A lot of the things I've talked about are available as resources on our website. If you go to the agency toolbox and under forms, you will see a couple of documents that you can use to help you when you're trying to write your letter of intent. So building your case worksheet is kind of how you can pull together the information you need before you start writing. And then there's a sample donation request letter where you can kind of fill in the blanks for your organization. Obviously, edit it to make it specific to your situation, but it gives you a start of how I would suggest writing a letter of intent. And then there's a couple of samples of brochures and flyers that you could use as templates. And then the final item that's on there right now is the PowerPoint around that we presented about a year ago on individual giving. And because of what I had said about the importance of individuals, you might want to revisit that and take a look again about some of the ideas in there about requesting information from, requesting donations from individuals. So check our website. We're trying to put more information up on there that will help you. And this is just a recap of those resources that are on the website. If you get an opportunity to prepare what I call a formal grant application that might be online or it might be just a proposal narrative with specific questions, answer the questions. You may find yourself repeating information. Try and include all the basic information that I mentioned for the letter of intent, either in the answers to the questions or as an attachment. Call and get advice if you don't understand the questions or if you have problems with the application process. If it's online, save it frequently so that you don't lose everything you've done. And have someone else read the application or the letter of intent before you submit, both for typos and for content. Sometimes it helps to have somebody who doesn't know anything about what you do read it, because that could well be your potential donor. And if it doesn't make sense to your neighbor that doesn't really understand what the food pantry is, it probably won't make sense to the person you're writing to. So it's always worth having somebody else take a look at it. Certain attachments that may be required with the grant application, I would suggest you include these anyway, and also with a letter of intent. Your 501c3, if they are going to fund you, they will need proof of that, so you might as well send it right at the beginning. A list of board of directors with their association, and any supporting materials such as a brochure, quotes that you have from your clients, testimonials, photos. Press reports are nice if you had the press come out and do a little story about your food pantry. Put a copy of that in. And then don't be afraid to tell people who else is supporting you financially. Sometimes people feel like, well, I don't want to tell them that we're getting money from such and such and such and such, because then they won't give us any. But believe me, it gives your organization credibility if you can say, oh, this local corporation or this foundation already supports us. Then they're going to think, oh, well, if they support them, then they must be an okay organization. Plus, no funder wants to be the only person that's funding your organization, because then they feel a huge responsibility. If they pull out, what are you going to do? So don't be afraid to tell people who else is supporting you. It gives you great credibility. And then once you've submitted, you may wait anything from a week to 6 months. Everybody is different. If you do receive a grant or a donation, call and thank, followed by a formal letter and receipt for the donation. Invite them to visit. If it's a corporation, they may be looking for some press recognition with a check presentation or at least a photo. Invite their employees to come volunteer and do the recognition then. Try and report on how their funds have helped your organization. You may be required to report annually a year after the grant. I would suggest you try and report after 6 months, even if it's just a phone call that says, you know, thank you so much. We were able to get like to hear how they're helping. And just a note here that if it's a kind of formal application, your reporting guidelines may include outcomes. And I just wanted to remind you, outcomes are what happens to the people you help. And outputs are how much food, the numbers, how many people you're serving, how much food. So a typical output would be we distributed 20,000 pounds to 1,000 different individuals last week or something like that. The outcome would be that those people that received food at our food pantry were no longer hungry and able to use their limited resources for other essential needs such as housing, transportation. So outcomes is what happens to the people you're helping. If you don't receive the grant, still call and thank them for their consideration or send a thank you letter. Still invite them to visit. Ask for feedback, you know, why weren't we funded? Often the response will just be that they had too many requests and they just couldn't spread the money thin enough to fund everybody. Ask if you can apply again next year. Excuse me. Don't get discouraged. Sometimes people need time to get to know you. And they might, after you've applied once, they might see something in the newspaper or talk to a friend that volunteers with you or see something in the community, and then they know who you are, or they're keeping their eyes out open to kind of see what you're doing in the community. The next time you apply, they'll know who you are, and you may be lucky. So now I'm going to move on to the specific crafts grant opportunity that we are offering from the food bank. Again, this is funded by Craft Foods and is specifically for capacity building. So the eligibility is food pantries or soup kitchens. You have to be in good standing and an equal opportunity provider. If you were denied a past request for this grant, I think this is the 4th year we have provided this grant, or if you're not sure if you're eligible, please call and ask somebody at the food bank. The deadline is January 31st. Try and submit early if you can. If you were funded last year, we do need to have your progress report before you submit your application or with your application. Be honest about what you've done with that money. If you haven't, if you still have money remaining, or you can't show that it has made an impact on your capacity, you will be less likely to receive funding again. Capacity building means more food to more people more often, and this is what we are trying to help you do. The maximum, we have raised the maximum awards to $2,000, and the two areas that we are looking for to fund are storage, so that would be refrigerators, freezers, equipment for helping you move food through or move your clients through your pantry more efficiently, and technology. As you will see by this seminar and some of the things I showed you on our website, we are moving more and more towards online resources, email communication, and you really do need to have computers and resources that will allow you to take the best advantage of those resources. We are not offering any food credits for this grant. If your request falls below $2,000, please do not round it up. Put exactly what you estimate you need for your project. This will allow more food pantries to benefit. Here's some examples of equipment and technology that you might want to apply for. I had mentioned under technology also the online giving software. So if you are interested in pursuing that, you might want to ask for the basic setup costs that would allow you to add online giving to your web page. The application process, all the information is on our website, but I'm just going to go briefly through what you need to put into your application. Your organization information, your mission, your core activities, how many people you're serving, how many staff you have and volunteers. The purpose of your request, we'd like you to try and limit that to 100 words, just so that we have good summaries and we can compare those across all grant applications. Your organization background. I apologize. The organization information is the first page of your contact information and your address. Purpose of the grant request is what you're asking for. Organization background is where we would like one paragraph about your mission, your core activities, how many people you're serving, staff and volunteers. And then your project description, the need for you to build capacity and how you think you can best do that, and how much more food you or more people you can serve if your grant is funded. A brief budget. We are not requiring estimates, like printed estimates, excuse me, but obviously we need an estimate of what you think each item is going to cost. We're not requiring the backup documentation this time. We are also working on preparing a list of vendor resources for frequently requested equipment, and call us if you need advice on where to go to get the best freezer or the cheapest shopping cart, stuff like that. It does need to be signed by your executive director. If you are able to sign and scan it or add an electronic signature, that is preferred. If you don't have that capability, we will take typed name of the executive director, but please explain to us why you cannot have it actually signed. And right now we are not requesting any supplementary attachments. We are trying to streamline this process so you are able to email your grant application to us. Be specific about what you're asking for and demonstrate the need, how it will increase efficiency, how it will get more food to more people more often, how it might increase community involvement or board involvement. We need to show, or you need to show us, that you are going to be able to get more food out to our hungry neighbors. This is just a recap on the budget. And if you have questions, please feel free to call me if it's questions regarding general finding grant resources or grant applications. Specific questions about the craft grants, please direct to Krista Schmidt or Jackie Haybine. Good luck. We look forward to receiving your applications.